you're just shameless. You're just setting us up here. This
Yeah.
moment. Oh, Mav's going down. He's dead.
Just pulling the bowstring back as far as you possibly could. Maybe too far.
No,
Who knows?
no, it worked. I mean, yeah, I've seen a lot of movies, and I still thought
He's
maybe
going
he's
down.
going there.
Prepare your ears, humans. Happy, Sad, Confused begins now.
I'm Josh Horowitz, and this is a happy, sad, confused watch-along. What are we watching today, guys? We're watching the movie that saved movies. The movie filled with Tom Cruise, with Miles Teller wiggling, with Miles Teller facial hair, and yes, more Tom Cruise. We're watching Top Gun Maverick with director Joseph Kosinski. Joe, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
It's good to see you, man. Congratulations for the umpteenth time on this amazing, remarkable film. Luckily, this is one of the most rewatchable movies of all time, so we can tolerate watching it.
That's great to hear. Thank you. That's the ultimate compliment, I think.
So we're going to dig in. The way this is going to work, guys, if you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening to the podcast, you're going to hear all the best bits. But if you are a glutton for punishment, if you just want to sit with Joe and I for the entire duration of Top Gun Maverick, here's what you do. Go to patreon.com/happy-sad-confused. The whole shebang is waiting for you there. First of all, it has to fill you with a certain delight to see this logo.
Yeah, no, that was very important to me. I pitched that to Jerry, and he was delighted to bring it back to honor, obviously, Don Simpson's contribution to the original. So yeah, we had to rebuild it, which was fun to do.
I remember vividly seeing a press screening of this and being struck by this opening credits, which are 99% exactly what was in the original, hearing the music and just feeling the flood of emotion. Was it always intended to start exactly this way?
Yeah, I think that always was the idea, was to let the audience know that this is a Top Gun film. And, the opening of the original film is so iconic. It's what I remember, vividly seeing it as a kid myself. So to bring those back, but obviously update it for the age we live in by adding "and women" to that opening paragraph, because there are a number of female aviators in Top Gun and actually flew for the movie. So that was the only kind of tweak we made.
All right, so we have to get into you kind of dive us right back into Top Gun world.
Yeah.
The music, the iconography. Talk to me a little bit about how you constructed that. Was that always the intent to kind of bring this music in now? Did you play with that?
Yeah, I mean, it was something I think we always knew that we would open with the kind of Harold Faltermeyer theme at the beginning, and then Danger Zone came in as we were kind of putting this sequence together. Again, Top Gun to me is kind of it was a universe. It's a world that you have to go into. This is not quite the real world. This is a world where, the sun is always setting.
Yeah, magic hour,
you
24/7.
can ride a ninja without a helmet, with no fear of being pulled over. And kind of putting you in this world again was kind of the first step. And then, here, finding Maverick again, where is he? What's he been up to? Starting to kind of peel away the layers of that mystery with this opening, which we shot out at Inyo Kern, California, which anyone who drives up to Mammoth from LA will see Maverick's hangar on the right side as you head up 395.
Talk to me a little bit about, I know your pitch to Tom when you got on board this project, one of the key components was where we find Maverick, and the fact that he hasn't really evolved. In fact, he's kind of stuck.
Right.
Did Tom respond to that? Was there an evolution, or was it kind of baked in from the beginning of your participation of where we would find Maverick?
Well, that was the big question, because in the drafts that I had read, it felt like Maverick, before I kind of started working on the project, it felt like Maverick essentially was exactly the same guy he was in 1986, still buzzing the tower,
right,
at the air station. And it felt like we needed to find him. Like you said, Maverick is Maverick, but 36 years have passed, and
it becomes sadder. It's like that's cool 36 years ago when you're a young man, but when you're in middle age, it's there's a little more weight to it.
Right. So what we see is Maverick's still a captain. Most importantly, I think from kind of an emotional point of view, we see that he's alone.
Right.
He's surrounded by the memories the awards, the accomplishments he's done. He's given his whole life to aviation, but he is alone at the opening of this film. And, this always was a journey of Maverick essentially kind of finding a family, which is the reason why we return to the hangar at the end of the film and see that it is a very different feel when we go back. But, when you talk about that first pitch, one of the things I did talk to Tom about was, what is Maverick exactly doing now? And I was kind of obsessed with this idea of Maverick as kind of a Chuck Yeager figure. The Right Stuff is a very important touchstone for this film.
Especially this opening sequence.
Yes, and obviously it's no mistake that Ed Harris is in this film. So for me, Maverick as Yeager, kind of pushing the envelope of what's possible, was an important kind of foundation for the character at the opening, and kind of reintroduce, people who love Top Gun to what Maverick's up now, but also for people who hadn't seen the original film, which is about half of our audience, to kind of explain who this guy is and what makes him tick.
And structurally, correct me if I'm wrong, was there an iteration of the film that kind of flashed forward in the very beginning where we meet Maverick towards the end of the film first?
Yes, there was a draft that an idea Chris McQuarrie had, which I loved, which was that we would, after we see that opening sequence on the deck, we cut below and we see Maverick in that tight close-up that you see in the third act saying, "Talk to me, Goose," and we just feel the weight of some enormous decision on him. And then we flash back and start our story of how to get to that point. So it was a great idea. I loved it, but ultimately, as we were putting the film together, it felt like it was unnecessary.
Right. Should we immediately get to the most controversial take on Top Gun Maverick that I know you've heard a lot, which is Maverick dies in the Dark Star sequence, and the rest is a dream. Did that catch you off guard? I assume that was not a real thing ever discussed.
No, that wasn't. I mean, maybe, actually, the original version of the script, we actually followed Maverick in his free fall back to Earth, which would have, I guess, debunked that theory. Which was a pretty spectacular sequence, imagining what it's like to re-enter from space in your spacesuit.
So when you heard that conjecture, that theory, does it amuse you? It's kind of a badge of
honor.
Right?
I love it. Film is meant to be interpreted. I love that there's, multiple ways to read it. It's, hopefully it's a piece of art meant to be interpreted. And I love people reading those things into it. It's like the Big Lebowski theory that Donnie's not really there.
Exactly.
So, no, I welcome that.
So this was, again, one of the key components of the early pitch to Thomas, I understand it. In 2017, as the story goes, correct me if I'm wrong, you and Jerry Bruckheimer visit Tom. You have about 20 minutes on the clock to give your take on what you think a Top Gun sequel should be. And Dark Star was part of it.
Dark Star was one of those things. Obviously, the most important thing was the kind of emotional core of the film, which is the relationship between Maverick and Rooster, which is, I think, the thing that really hooked him. But this notion of what is Maverick doing at this point, I think, was another important piece of the puzzle. The notion of shooting as much of this practical as possible was also something I pitched to him. And then obviously the title was the other one. I said, we can't call this Top Gun 2, which is what it was called at the time. I said, this is Top Gun Maverick.
Well, because I'd followed this for years, and I'd even asked Tom about this at various events about the Top Gun sequel, because it was always being talked about. And there was even talk when Tony Scott was still with us. There was actually talk that he had signed on, that it was a go project or close to a go project. Yeah. So presumably there was a script.
Yes.
Did you read that script, and because there was also talk that Maverick wasn't even the lead character in an earlier version of the Top Gun sequel?
There was a script by Peter Craig that I believe he did with Tony that I did not read, because that was maybe 7 years before I started working on it. Okay. There was two drafts by Justin Marks, were the two drafts I read, and there were a couple elements from those drafts that we kept in this version, which were the character of Penny Benjamin was something he had in there, which I thought was fantastic. And the notion of stealing an F-14, which I said, I knew that had to be in the film.
Right.
But otherwise, yeah, we kind of, Eric Singer, Aaron Kruger, and Chris McQuarrie, wrote this draft. We worked on it for 18 months.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I've been on many flights the last year, and there is about 30% of the cabin that is always watching Top Gun Maverick. You must have experienced this.
It is surreal to be walking down the aisle and see the smattering of different scenes. And like even occasionally I have a couple weird things have happened where I've gotten like a note from the pilot while flying, saying, I'm not going to do anything crazy like Maverick, and you're like, it's kind of an odd note to get from the pilot on a...
It's disconcerting.
Yeah, but...
I will say, I was going to bring this up as a sore point. I do feel like, and this is going to come up later as a line that recurs, don't think, just do is the last thing I ever want to hear a pilot say as a mantra. If I'm on a commercial airline and that's their code,
yep,
I'm getting off that plane.
Exactly. That's why when I got the note, it was a little unsettling that he was even considering trying to pull any sort of Maverick move in a 777. But
you've established almost like a little company of actors that have recurred in different of your films. Like, it's a testament to you. They obviously love working with you. I was half surprised, honestly, that like Brolin didn't show up in this. Was he ever on your mind?
Absolutely. Brolin was on my mind. For me, you always have to, you can't put all your eggs in one basket. So for me, it was Brolin and Ham were the top two.
He would have done this role, presumably.
What's that?
He would have been.
And Joshua had done this role. We did actually talk about it, but it just he was having a baby literally the moment we were starting to we were going to start photography, so I knew it just wasn't a possibility.
Gotcha.
But yeah, Brolin, Ham, both guys I'd be thrilled to work with again.
Since we're going to see the ensemble here, let's start by talking about Miles. Mm-hmm. So this film so hinges on that relationship. It sounds like when you went back to the original Top Gun, you realized, no surprise, it was really about that relationship between Tom and Anthony Edwards and Goose and Maverick. What were you looking for in Rooster?
He had to have a very specific blend of qualities. If you look at Carol and Goose in the original film, just incredible personalities. I mean, both went on to become huge stars for obvious reasons. The charisma on both sides. So it's like, well, what does the child of those two people, what does he have? And obviously I had just finished a film with Miles and just had an incredible experience working with him, in that he's, I think, one of the few actors of his generation that can bring the fun, the wit, the charm, but also has the dramatic chops to pull off the real kind of deep-seated damage that's been done to him, losing a father, and obviously the events that precede this film that we learn about, and can go toe-to-toe with, one of the biggest movie stars on earth. And I thought Miles might be the right guy right from the start. In that very first meeting, I actually showed a picture of Miles to Tom, because he had blonde hair and Only the Brave. And
even in that pitch meeting? Oh, wow.
I actually had a photo of him.
So you had him in mind.
It was a Hail Mary. Yeah, I said, I think this. And Tom instantly, I mean, he already had so much respect for Miles, because of the choices he had made in building his career to that point. And once I got them in the same room together, it was like instant. Yeah. It was just like, it was one of those things where it's like the chemistry was instant between them, and the respect was mutual, and I could just see that, the two of them were going to be fantastic together, and they were.
Miles is, I mean, look, I've known him forever, and he has that mix of kind of like, look, he's deferential to Tom, no doubt, But he has bravado.
Yes.
Like he's that alpha
Yes.
male.
No, and you need to have that in this film. You got to stand up, and I could see that, and knew that of Miles. So, on the other hand, I knew it was going to be really challenging for Miles along with all the other actors, because it's one thing to act in a movie like this. Obviously they had to go way beyond in terms of getting in the jets and
Right.
doing this stuff that Tom looks forward to doing,
Yeah, but it's not every actor.
Not every
I was gonna
actor
say,
can
like,
do that. Yeah.
the challenge of casting this is not just getting the best actor, but knowing that these are the kind of actors that are going to be willing to put in that level of commitment.
Yeah, and I tried to be upfront as much as I could with them, and a couple actors respectfully declined,
Oh, really?
saying I remember one actor said that, they had issues flying commercial. And I was like, well, this
is not the movie for you.
This is not going to be the experience you'll be doing. So, but, you look at who we did get, and all of them just crushed it, as Tom would say, in the jets, just beyond all of our expectations.
So before we get to the rest of them, look, Glenn, of course, we'll get to in a second. He was in the running for Rooster.
Mm-hmm.
It's well known that Nick Holt was in the running, and Tom obviously loved him because
Yeah.
he cast him. Didn't end up happening, but he was going to be in Mission Impossible.
Yes.
Was his take interesting too? I mean, he was obviously nearly got it, so you must have been
Yeah.
intrigued by Nick Holt.
Yeah, no, all three of them are incredible actors and all did an amazing job. I had to do the due diligence of testing all three, but as I already said,
Your gut
Miles,
was
I guess,
Miles.
was the first initial instinct, and luckily we convinced Glenn to play Hangman, and it's the perfect role for him. Again, he took what was there on the page and elevated it.
And that role expanded a bit too, as I understand it, because this is a fascinating story, and that Glenn turned it down.
Yes.
Glenn really had his heart and soul into Rooster.
Yep.
And he's been on the precipice for a while and felt like this was going to be it.
Yep.
Doesn't get it. That's a hard moment. And
I mean,
like,
a huge Top Gun fan, huge patriot. One of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my career is call Glenn and tell him he did not get the role of Rooster. And since then, he showed me a picture of him receiving that phone call, and I think he's wearing an American flag T-shirt as he's talking to me on the phone. So devastating for him. One of the worst parts of my job is having to choose between three actors of that caliber.
Yeah.
But luckily, as you said, we were able to convince Glenn, and really it was Tom who did it. I'm sure you've heard the story, which I was witness to, which was amazing, to convince Glenn to join, to pick the film, not the character.
Right.
And then make the character great. And that's exactly what Glenn did. So everything worked out as it should.
Well, and you look at, I've always remarked in talking about Tom, especially I think of like the first 10, 15 years of his career, of the way he approached the choices he made, picking projects and filmmakers.
Yep.
And just like, you look at the 80s and 90s greatest filmmakers,
He hit them all.
He hit as many as he could.
I mean, it's amazing when you look at the list of filmmakers, and that was what the advice he gave Glenn that really blew his mind, which is choose the films, not the characters. Make the characters great once you're in the film. And obviously now looking back at Tom's career, you're like, oh yeah, I can see that now. But man, to have that insight at a young age, for Tom to be able to see that, it's just, it's pretty mind-blowing, but no surprise why he has gotten to the level he's at.
So how was Hangman different in earlier iterations before you guys kind of like fleshed it out a little bit?
Just a little more one-dimensional, more of a bad guy, maybe closer to Iceman, and it just needed dimension. And once Glenn was cast and agreed to take this journey, then Chris was able to tailor the script to Glenn a bit, and again, putting this group of actors together, there was this chemistry that you just can't manufacture between all of them, and watching them flight train together, watch them go through swim training together, and to see the bond that was formed, and to see the energy and how they played off each other in real life, it all fed into their on-screen personas, and created that magic that you hope that you can capture when making a film like this.
The decision to not bring Meg's character back, is that, I mean, that's a narrative choice. I mean, if she exists in this universe still, that adds a whole nother set of questions.
Yeah, no, we as much as I would have loved to have worked with her, narratively, there's a reason why Carol can't be in this world, both for Rooster and for Maverick, as we learn later, in that one of her wishes to him was to make sure Rooster doesn't fly again.
Right.
And if she were still around, I think it would complicate that. So, yeah, that was one of those. That's one of those hard choices you have to make when telling a story like this, a continuation.
Set the record straight for me. Did Paramount ever have a conversation with you about streaming?
Never with me, no. What happened behind closed doors at the upper levels of the studio, maybe it came up, but our intent was always for this to be, it was shot for the big screen. It was meant to be a theatrical experience, and Tom, I know, was not going to let this movie be released any other way. And as hard as it was to hold it for 2 years, obviously, I'm glad we did. We I think released it at the perfect time, and the audience showed up and did everything.
1.5 billion worth of showing up. I mean, this was a phenomenon and must have exceeded even your wildest expectations.
Oh, absolutely, all of ours. Yeah, all of ours.
Because did you have? I mean, I would assume you're self-aware enough to know that the movie's working and that it works on the level and you're satisfied with it. But did you have anxiety prior to release? Did
you always
still feel
do.
Like it go either way?
You always, even if you think it's working, you just, how it's received, what the audience sees, how the critics react to it is always, it's not really related to how you feel about the film.
Right.
It just isn't. It's its own thing. The movie tested fine. It wasn't like it was off the charts. And it wasn't until CinemaCon, which maybe you were there.
I actually wasn't at CinemaCon.
Okay.
I saw you guys at San Diego, of course.
CinemaCon was the first time I watched the final film with a full house. And it happened to be at CinemaCon with a bunch of critics and journalists and, pretty tough crowd usually.
Right.
And after that screening, the response from that screening was the first time I kind of exhaled a little bit and said, all right, maybe this works, and then it was just kind of a ride from there.
How many coconut cakes do you get per holiday season? The famous cruise cake.
There's another level of cruise cake, which I don't know if it's out there. But
so the platinum level of cruise cake.
If you have kids, I have 3 kids. You get the cruise gingerbread house, which is spectacular. With the kids' names and the figures and stuff. It's so that's next level cruise cake.
I like to imagine he constructs it himself. He's working on it.
I've gotten cakes from him that almost seem that way. On my birthday this year, I got a F-18 as a cake with me flying it. Literally my face photoreal on a cake. I don't know how or where he got it made. It was spectacular. So yeah, there's multiple levels to the cruise cake experience.
I'm just trying to get to the base level, Joe. I'm going to be honest. Really, the ulterior motive of this and every interview I ever do with anybody around Tom and Top Gun and Mission is to get on the damn cake list. So whatever you can do.
I don't know. I don't think there's any secret. I don't think there's a formula. I think at some point it'll just show up, and that's what makes it all the more special.
Yeah, I got it. Let's talk more important things. How the hell you shot this movie?
Well, the goal was to shoot it for real.
Yeah.
When I did that first meeting with Tom, I showed him some footage, what are called, funny enough, cruise videos, which are the Navy pilots put together these kind of greatest hits of the year of their training that they shoot with their own GoPros. And the footage that they were getting with these GoPro cameras stuck on the inside of their cockpits was better than any aerial footage I had seen done with much more expensive equipment. So I showed that to Tom and I said, I know we can get you in a plane, but I think we can possibly get some of the other actors in the plane as well and capture a lot of this film for real. And
you're speaking his language there. Then
for him, it's like, there's no other way,
yeah,
Joe.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to do.
Yep.
And then it was a matter of convincing the Navy that we could do this, to create a camera system that would pull this off. When we first approached the Navy, they said, there's no way you're going to be able to get a film camera. And by film, I mean a motion picture camera into one of our jets. By the time we were done, we had 6 in there.
And and IMAX?
IMAX quality cameras, Sony Venice cameras, 6K cameras, using the Rialto system, which splits the sensor from the recorder so that it creates a much smaller form factor. If you go online, you can see the layout of the 6 cameras. The actors in the back seat, the Top Gun pilots in the front, dressed the same as the actors. So when you're looking at the actor, you see them fly,
Right.
It appears to be flying the jet. When you look over the pilot's shoulder, you see what you think is the actor flying the jet. And when you cut that together,
Amazing.
it gives you the experience. But it's all captured for real with Top Gun pilots flying real maneuvers. And I, just gotta say, we couldn't have done this without the Navy. The Top Gun pilots, their professionalism, their skill is what makes the action sequences great. So just an incredible experience. And again, hats off to the actors for putting in the training to keep up with Tom and pull this off.
Were you keeping notes officially, unofficially, on who was puking the most in the planes?
I think they were unofficially. Among them, it was a
Badge of honor.
Badge of honor, certainly.
Yeah.
Glenn was very proud of his performance in the
Or
jet.
lack thereof.
Yeah. I can't imagine. I just can't imagine. I don't think anyone can imagine what they were going through in those jets, and being able to do the movie.
Yeah. Even more intense and dangerous than the plane stuff.
This is the hardest scene to shoot on the movie. I got to be honest with you. This is the San Francisco Bay, 20 to 30 knot winds. That's a carbon fiber race boat that Jennifer is piloting there.
How are they alive? That's not right. Joe, what are you doing to Tom Cruise? You're going to kill him.
I loved the idea that Penny Benjamin is someone who can do something that keeps Maverick off balance,
right,
figuratively and literally, right there. That's him almost falling off the boat.
Yeah.
But it was important for her character to have something, where she can one-up Maverick. And Jennifer trained hard to pull this scene off. And again, I shot this scene 3 times. I shot it once off the coast of San Pedro, once off the coast of San Diego, and then finally here in San Francisco in order to get the speed that we needed to get the wind.
Are there 10 other people on that boat that are hiding?
There are.
There must be.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
okay.
there are. There's an America's Cup team basically inside the boat making sure that everything was going
Okay, that makes me feel
well.
better. Okay.
But Tom did rip the spinnaker off the boat that afternoon when he plowed through a wave, which was pretty spectacular.
History has been very, very kind to Tron Legacy. It made a lot. Like people may or may not remember, it made basically $400 million.
Yeah.
And it still
Crazy.
boggles my mind that you guys didn't get the sequel. Obviously, they're doing their own thing now. But talk to me. It is a pervasive film in pop culture. It still is. It exists. You must feel that, and that must be, again, you're experiencing it in a different way with Maverick. But can you talk to me a little bit about the satisfaction that 10 plus years on you feel for Legacy?
Oh,
still
of course.
existing?
No, listen, that would have, we all could have only dreamed that it would become that kind of, I don't want to say cultish because I don't know if it's that far, but that's kind of what the first film was.
Right.
And Tron was never meant, it's not really a mainstream property. I always explain it's the art student with the black fingernails in the back row.
Right.
He's, it's your alternative blockbuster. And very proud of that film. Like you said, can't believe we pulled it off. We were all so many.
You were on the deep end.
Yeah, my first film, Daft Punk's first score. Just a Garrett, Olivia, just all fresh new people making this insane film with Disney's backing. I just did a remaster a couple months ago. So
nice.
Again, to watch it again, now see it, Ultra HD, Atmos.
It's one
great.
of the great
I can't
like
wait for
movie
that to come
theater
out.
experiences, as I recall. Do you have any connection to even what they're doing, this Jared Leto project?
I do have a little bit. I met with the director of the new film and know a little bit about the approach because it is related, I think, partly to a version that we called Tron Ascension,
Right.
but through a different point of view. So I'm really excited to see what they do with it, and thrilled that Tron's still alive.
So let's talk about Val and the Return of Iceman, because the other shirt I almost wore today was my Real Genius shirt, because I was I was an obsessive Val Kilmer fan, still am. The evolution of this, look, obviously Val's in a different place in his life and is not able to act in the way that I'm sure would have liked to, but so beautiful the way you were able to integrate him into the film. And as I understand it, he was part and parcel of that.
We met with him early on. We were all adamant to try to find a way to integrate Iceman and Val into the story. So we met with Val early, and it was Val who came up with the idea of Iceman's story in this film, and it was a very generous thing for Val to allow us to do and to do in this film. And working with him was everything I dreamed it would be. He's funny, so smart, so good with story. Obviously, an incredible actor, as you see what he does in this scene.
How different a day or a couple days is it on set? It must have felt like a different energy.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this was a very intense scene. It was a very emotional day, not only on screen but off screen. I think for both of them to be revisiting these characters 36 years later. This is one of those. Shooting this scene is something I'll never forget. It was just watching two guys at the top of their game, work together. And it was, again, I didn't have to work hard. I created the environment, and we dialed the script in and let these guys go.
As many callbacks as there are, there you avoided some. There's no like, I feel the need for speed.
Yep.
Is there an iteration of the script? Did that ever come up?
Sure. No, we tried it. We tried everything.
Did you shoot it?
We shot it.
I still
Didn't
feel
work.
that need. I still feel that need for speed.
I think we shot it in Dark Star. I think there was a version where he said that. You got to try. Art is about trying, failing, trying again, failing again, and you have to give yourself permission to try things, even if you don't think it's going to work. And sometimes it does, but ultimately, the edit room is where you really craft the film that you're making. And the film, you find it, and the film starts to speak to you, and you find your way through it.
Okay, most important scene, obviously, dogfight football. Do you go through different sports? Do you?
No, I think it.
Because this is not a real sport.
This is not a real sport. We created. Aaron Kruger created this sport on the page, and we definitely had some head scratching about what exactly are the rules of dogfight football.
Right. Has anyone tried this out in reality yet?
I don't know. But the point is offense, defense at the same time, chaos, which essentially is, ultimately what they find themselves in the third act. But more importantly, it's about building a team. And that's what Maverick's goal is here. And, it was a great couple of afternoons at Coronado on the actual beach that the Navy owns.
Did you know when the wiggle happened, the Miles Teller wiggle, that you had something
The wiggle
special?
was a total surprise. I don't know if Miles had been working on that for months, but thank God I
like to think he
captured
was
it. That's
for
the most
6
important
months.
thing. I got it, for the actors, I'm sure one of the best memories, but also get in the shape they need to get into for this film. A lot of pressure on them.
And they shot it twice, didn't they? 'Cause didn't like you?
We shot
guys...
it. I mean, we shot. It was all shot during magic hour, which is when the sun is just above. So I had probably an hour and 15 minutes on one afternoon. Then 2 weeks later, another hour, and then the shot of Rooster, the close-up of him lifting Maverick up. That was something we grabbed even later than that. Just a little piece.
You obviously look at all your films. There's a high degree of difficulty that clearly you get off on in some way that you enjoy pushing for narrative purposes always. But like, just pushing like, I think of a lot of great filmmakers that are, Zemeckis in his own way was always like that, right? And you're in the middle right now, as we speak today, of shooting another boundary pushing movie. So this is F1? Is it an F1 film?
Yeah, it's an F1 film for Apple, starring Brad Pitt, Damson Idris, Javier Bardem, Kerry Condon, incredible cast. Definitely taking everything I learned on Top Gun and now applying it to the world of Formula One, which has been an enormous, enormous challenge. But again, I can't wait for people to see what we've been able to capture, shooting at the Grand Prix, developing a whole new camera system, the next generation of what we did here. Having actors driving real cars on the track.
I was going to say, is Brad's
driving.
Brad's driving.
Brad's driving. Damson's driving. Months of training, driving real race cars at speed, on tracks during Grand Prix weekends. It's been pretty amazing.
Does this scratch the racing itch, or is there Days of Thunder, Cold Trickle, legacy sequel in you? Did you even ever flippantly discuss it with Tom and Jerry?
I didn't, but that would be an amazing crossover now, thinking about it, with Brad's character of Sonny Hayes in the F1 to come across
there's Cole now,
a NASCAR champ like Cole. But
weren't you going to do a movie with Brad and Tom?
I was going to do a movie called Go Like Hell that became Ford Ferrari,
right?
In I think it was 2015, with Brad and Tom, and got to the point where I had them both in a room reading the script together, which was pretty amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's we've never seen them together, have we? Oh no, of course. Interview with the Vampire.
Interview with the Vampire. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, at least
we'll see.
It bore some different fruit.
Yes. No. It all worked out. But when I watch the scene, I smile because I see Lewis Pullman in the back seat there on that shot.
Uh-huh.
And in the movie, he's saying the lines, but in the dailies, he's saying, "I forgot my line. I have no idea what I'm doing." But it doesn't matter. We told them, if you forget your lines, just say anything, count to 10 if you have to. We'll make it work in ADR. And that was one of the funniest takes I remember, is watching Lewis just freak out.
Just bob your head a lot.
Yeah.
Look concerned. Yeah. We'll fix it up later. No, that's hysterical.
He did a great job. They all did. I mean...
Well, you do. You have to convey a lot with your eyes and just like your movement.
No, it's a different way of acting. When you've only got this much showing, all that has to come through there. So it was a learning process to make sure that we were doing what we needed to do to tell the story.
So it's been a year plus since the film came out. As I said, $1.5 billion. Consideration awards that were won. Look, it took over 3 decades for a sequel to be made. I find it very difficult to believe there haven't been at least a few meetings at Paramount, brainstorms. Can we come up with something? Have you been a part of those discussions?
I haven't. I mean, listen, I can't help myself, as you're about to go to sleep at night, the brain dreams, and of course you can't help but think of, if there was another one, what would that story be? How could we possibly, what's the emotional reason to bring Maverick back? What's the challenge? Having done this, how could you possibly push it further enough that there is a challenge there to go beyond? So of course you think about those things, but for me, I've got this F1 movie in front of me right now.
Yep.
I'm developing some other things Tom's off shooting another mission, and like you said, possibly going to space.
That's a good excuse to, yeah.
So we've all got very ambitious things ahead of ourselves.
Is it the kind of thing where, like, I assume you're friends with Tom, obviously. So, like, is it the kind of thing, like, where it's understood, like, when you have an idea to pitch him, you will, or do you throw random ideas out as you go?
No, I don't throw random, and I would only do it in person, you know. So maybe, you know, when Tom and I have dinner, at some point, it'll come up. But yeah, no, it's not something I would just throw out, because also I'm busy, he's busy.
What's the point?
Jerry, you know, Jerry's producing the Formula One movie with me, so Jerry and I are working hard on that now. But listen, it took 36 years for Maverick. Could take 36 for the next one, and who knows who does that?
How about 5? in these times, 5 years is a lot between sequels, so somewhere in between.
Yeah, I don't know. It's all about, you know. For me, it's about finding again a story that I love, a challenge that's exciting, and that's, for me, that's why I do it, and I know that's why Tom does it as well.
So this emotional sequence, of course, obviously, the farewell to Iceman. This does seem like a opportunity. If you were going to sprinkle in more cameos, I could imagine a Rick Rossovich, a Tom Skerritt sneaking in there. Was that considered?
It was absolutely considered, but ultimately, you know, you get to that question of fan service. Are you doing it for the fans, or are you doing it for the story? And what story are you telling? And right here, we were so honed in and feeling really good that we were right on story for what needed to happen. It didn't make sense to
almost a distraction.
Hey, check this out! Look who's here! And wouldn't have been fair to those characters ultimately to include them as just cameos.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So yeah, you know, like I said, you have to be diligent and when making a film like this, and make sure that you're always on point and not getting distracted.
Before we get to the end, I should mention the music, which is so fantastic in this film, and obviously a fascinating collaboration between very disparate sort of artists.
Amazing, huh?
Of course, we have Harold Faltermeyer, where it all begins.
Yep.
You know, we have Kenny Loggins in there, but we have Gaga, we have Hans Zimmer.
Yep.
Again, this like finding a cohesive music soundscape.
Yeah. No, I mean, you'd never think with 3 composers that would come together, but I mean, if you have Hans in the middle of it, he was, you know, as soon as we heard Gaga's track melody, he instantly said, I can use that. I can work that in the film. So you got to give Hans credit for knowing a great melody when he hears one.
Right.
And Harold Faltermeyer's themes are timeless. They just are. And so somehow those 3 elements combined to create, you know, a score, along with Lauren Balfe, who did some incredible work on the film as well, to create what this film needed. But yeah, again, you're working with the best in the business, and
a lot of good potential ringtones. You could do the gong. You could do any of those on your phone.
I'm sure not on mine, but I'm sure on someone's. I'm sure you can download those.
And no Gaga cameo. There aren't many places where I could imagine she would have justifiably popped up, but that's never discussed.
No, that would be tough. She, you know, has a tendency to fill the screen. I did get to shoot the music video.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
With her, which was amazing experience. We shot it in like 6 hours in Inyokern. It was 114 degrees out.
Oh God.
And she gave it all and just belted out a great track for the film. So that was you know, a nice bonus for getting to make this film. The most intense action sequence in the film, this is it, without a doubt. This is Tom doing something that, with Walleye, the pilot, who's a Blue Angel pilot, flying the Toyabe Canyon in Nevada, which is a low-level training route, meant to be flown at about 200 feet. They're flying it at under 50 feet. So special permission from the Navy, the ride of a lifetime. This pilot Walleye who flew it I mean, look at that. That is not CG. That shadow is on the mountain next to him. When he landed, he said to me, the pilot said, "Did you get it?" And I said, "Yeah," because I just watched the take. I said, "Yeah, I think we did." And he said, "Good, because I'm never doing that again."
This is one of the best pilots on the planet,
Yes,
probably.
and Tom is smiling through the whole sequence, in case you're wondering.
Do you ever worry about his safety? You have to, or you have to put that out of your mind?
Of course, I worried about all of them, but I had so much confidence in the Top Gun pilots that were flying. I knew they were in the best hands possible, and you see that in the film.
I mean, there's always going to be a degree of risk when you're flying
Of course.
planes like this, but
But they were
all you can
trained,
do
and
is-
they were trained for ejection. They knew what to do if something went wrong. But yeah, certainly that was the thing that weighed on me most. Was some nights I'd go to bed going like, "What am I doing? This is insane."
Right. And
just a great
no
experience.
less than, I mean, Spielberg essentially telling Tom,
Yeah.
"Thanks for saving movies."
I know, that was crazy. No, he said the same thing to me on a conference call
wow.
once, which was very bizarre and surreal.
Just like bite your lip and say, "Thank you, Mr.
I know,
Spielberg."
yeah. It's like you don't even know what to do except say thank you, because obviously I grew up on Steven Spielberg's movies. I loved everything he made. So to have him say that was pretty remarkable. And again, just another moment along that whole journey where you're like, how is this happening?
Here, you're just shameless. You're just setting us up here. This
Yeah.
moment. Oh, Mav's going down. He's dead.
Just pulling the bowstring back as far as you possibly could. Maybe too far.
No,
Who knows?
no, it worked. I mean, yeah, I've seen a lot of movies, and I still thought
He's
maybe
going
he's
down.
going there.
That's good.
But when I think of great dogfights, I think back to A New Hope and Star Wars. Star Wars guy growing up.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that almost goes without saying. But George, I mean, obviously everyone knows this. George cut that to World War II dogfight footage.
Right.
So it started as airplane footage, became, Star Wars, which is why it worked so well. And now here, I know there's definitely some parallels here with the trench run.
Oh, sure.
But that all comes out of military strategy,
Right.
Flying down a narrow canyon, trying to avoid enemy radar, hit a very small target, the difficulty of doing that. And instead of TIE fighters, we have fifth-gen fighters, which are real things. Obviously, we didn't have access to the real ones, but we were able to create relatively realistic ones using a little movie magic.
Did you have any trepidation about the facial hair for Rooster? Did you feel like, this is going to be a good way for the audience to key into who he is, or that it might be too on the nose?
It felt like I just felt like he needed it.
Yeah.
And it's not like, when I felt good about it is when I went to the carrier, and I have the photo. I met a bunch of young aviators who were doing their first catapult launches and landings where they train. And I looked at them, and half of them had the Rooster mustache.
Okay, so.
It's a Navy. I mean, if anyone who knows Navy pilots, they wear that mustache. The way it's trimmed, the way it is so it fits under your mask.
Got it.
So as soon as I saw that, I'm like, okay, it's not like we're pulling something out of the past here. This is the Rooster stash is a real life phenomena.
Right.
And and Miles just looked great with it.
So this sequence with Hangman saving the day, always on the page. Did this go through iterations, as you recall?
Hangman, I think it must have been there from early. I don't know if it was in the first draft that Glenn read, but again, we felt like we'd set it up that he had earned it as a character at this point. Because the last time you see him, he's kind of on the deck, just desperate to get in the fight. So there's that one dangling variable out there that we've set up. That,
Right.
I love that shot coming up through the clouds. That was shot off the coast of San Diego.
And now that I think about it, not to keep bringing up Star Wars, the little Han Solo at the
Definitely.
end of New Hope.
Definitely.
So then, again, this is like, you can kind of only do this in like a Top Gun movie, like
Yes.
this kind of like extended victory lap
Yep.
sequence.
Cheering, getting out of an airplane to a cheering crowd.
It's so great. It's like it's pure movie
There are
making.
things you can do in this film you can't do in any other, and that to me was kind of fascinating. And the challenge of making it is,
A little bit of buzzing the tower.
yep, no coffee spill though. Again, crossing
Showing
the line,
restraint, yeah.
crossing the line, possibly. Yeah. So the interesting thing about this scene, this cheering on the deck, is I didn't know I was shooting that scene till about 12 hours before it happened. We were on the carrier getting ready to go out to sea, and had a whole week, 2 weeks of stuff we'd planned to shoot out there. And then in the morning we were set to leave, something broke on the carrier, and it was unable to go. And all of a sudden, all the scenes that I was supposed to shoot for the next 2 weeks, I had a full crew. Because we were going to be dockside, I couldn't shoot. And I quickly looked at the schedule of what could I possibly shoot in a carrier stuck dockside the next day. And there were 2 scenes. There was the scene in the hull where Warlock gives the final mission brief to everyone standing among the jets. And the final scene of the movie.
God.
I know.
No pressure.
So Tommy Harper, our producer, somehow managed to find someone to crane the F-14 up onto the deck. I got the cast together. We pulled extras from the real crew on the ship and said, all right, we got to shoot the end of the movie, guys. And actors, this is all done dockside. The sun wasn't even out.
Can I just say, this line here is like the Field of Dreams, Dad, do you want to have a catch line of the last 20 years.
Yeah.
If you don't cry at this moment,
yeah,
it just works.
Thank God. Yeah, so I was saying the sun wasn't even out. This was a foggy day. The carrier was broken. Claudio put a light on a stand. I pulled the actors together. I just said, listen, I know you might not be prepared for this, but we got to shoot the end of the movie today. And there's something about the challenge of doing something unexpected that just puts everyone on their toes.
Yep.
And I firmly believe the scene is better and works because it was shot under those conditions, as opposed to, all right, the big scene is tomorrow, everyone get ready.
Right. Can't overthink it.
Yeah.
It's just...
Yeah, thank God it worked out, because otherwise I didn't want to be the guy who screwed up Top Gun.
You didn't.
Trust me.
You did not. I mean, look, I'm allowed to say this. You're not. It's actually a better movie than Top. I love Top Gun. This is a superior movie, and it's insane to say that. But and then of course it's lovely credit to Tony that had to do that.
Yeah.
No, congratulations, man. I mean, like, this is, like, as you said, a very special movie for a number of reasons, and I can't think of a better filmmaker that could have executed this. Thanks as always for the time, man.
Thank you, man. Always great to talk to you.
Always a pleasure. And
Let's do it again in a few years.
I was gonna say we'll do this one. We can do Tron. We can go back and forth.
Sounds good.
All right.
Anytime.
Thanks, buddy. All right.
Thanks, man. See ya.
If you want to watch all of Top Gun Maverick right now alongside me and director Joseph Kosinski, just go to patreon.com/happysadconfused. It's right there for you, along with all of our watch-alongs exclusively on Patreon.
And so ends another edition of Happy, Sad, Confused. Remember to review, rate, and subscribe to this show on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm a big podcast person. I'm Daisy Ridley, and I definitely wasn't pressured to do this by Josh.